Chris or Christine?
Christine.
Hi, Chief.
Councilman Nick, how are you?
Good, how are you, sir?
Good to see you.
Councilman Narducci, how are you, sir?
Chief Taylor, how are you?
Good.
Good evening, I'm Councilwoman Joanne Ryan. I'm calling the Committee on Finance regular meeting to order. It is Thursday, March 24th, 2022, and it is just 5:33 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you kindly read the roll?
Chairwoman Ryan,
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Castillo,
Present.
Councilman Narducci,
Here.
Councilwoman Anthony. Oh,
Just use-
okay. And Councilman Taylor.
Here.
All right, we have 5 present, we have a quorum.
Did we get affirmation from Councilwoman Anthony? She's there, right?
Yep, present. Present. Just tell her.
Present and accounted for.
Right.
Here I am.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, and we have Kenny Cheverini is our solicitor this evening. I see Councilman Correa has joined us this evening. Welcome, Councilman. Okay, I think that's the whole clan. Very good. Okay. I'd like to take a matter out of order if it is okay with my committee. I'd like to take motion to take item 4 out of order. May I have
So
that
moved.
motion? Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by
Second motion.
Tina Narducci. All in favor, aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Item 4, we have a number of documents that have been presented. I'd like to add them into as exhibits at this point in time. They are, so we have exhibit 13 through 17. Exhibit 13 is an updated opera, the multi-page, the 318-page document has been updated yet again. We have exhibit 14 is letters of support from Dorcas International and the Amos House. We have exhibit 15, which is the Capital City Community Center, Federal Hill House and Providence Community Library. Exhibit 16 would be the Providence Housing Authority OEO year-round youth program. And then we have exhibit 17, a memo from Federal Hill House on reason YTD enrollment reporting. So those documents will be added to the record. May I have a motion to enter 13 through 17?
Motion made.
Motion made by
Second.
Leader Narducci, seconded by Vice Chair Castillo and Leader Taylor. All in favor, aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have our exhibits. We are going to continue item 4 this evening. We've got a lot of documents that are coming in. I'm going to give the committee time to review them. And I'm going to ask for a motion to continue item 4 this evening. May I entertain a motion? Vice Chair makes
Second.
that motion to continue, seconded by Leader Taylor. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. We've continued item 4. Now we go to the top of the docket on item 1. Madam Clerk, could you, for the record, I'd also like to welcome, we have Christine clerking us today with Sherry. Welcome, Christine. I understand you're new in the council office and you're doing a great clerk's office. You're doing a great job. So please read item 1 into the record.
Resolution authorizing approval of the following ratification of contracts awarded by the Board of Supply, Contract and Supply in accordance with section 21-26A of the Code of Ordinances. Conduit State and Local Solutions Incorporated.
Okay, wonderful. Why don't we have, who's going to be testifying tonight on these 3 matters? Who's going to offer testimony? Because what I'd like to do is swear everybody in. So I've got Elaine Richards. Are you going to be testifying tonight, Elaine?
Yes,
Okay. Chief Mancini, are you testifying tonight? let's get everybody sworn in. That's my
Yes, need,
my
yes.
request.
Everybody,
Okay.
please raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Please state your name and where you're from.
Lawrence Mancini, Chief Financial Officer, City of Providence.
Elaine Richards, Deputy Commissioner, Public Safety.
It's Providence Police Chief.
Stephen Curry, Commissioner of Public Safety for the City of Providence.
Okay, thank you all very much. First item, it's been read into the record by Christine. Thank you. And we have, who's going to testify on this matter?
I will.
Okay. Commissioner Parry will be testifying. On the matter before us is approval of the conduit and local solutions contract. So please present the contract, if you will, to us. What's this all about?
So this is a conduit, provides 3 services to the City of Providence: speed, red light, and parking. Parking is in conjunction with environmental tickets, so all our systems for municipal court or traffic, conduit provides that service. There are 3 different ones: speed, which we are in contract with, conduit, red light, a different contract. We are under contract with them for that service, and the parking enforcement and environmental ticketing, which that contract expired, and we have engaged in a month-to-month continuous contract for that service. We have nearly completed an RFP to go out to bid for the parking and the environmental services. We expect that in the next 30 days. It's been several months or at least 10 weeks in developing an RFP to go out and bid that piece of the service that Conduit has provided. Through the internal auditor, we provided to both her and I believe finance the history, because it goes back to '04 that we've been engaged with Conduit for one service or another. And so some of this has gone before finance previous, when we had the speed camera program and had to renegotiate contract with the state law change and went back to finance. It was requested by the internal auditor that the entire conduit contracts, despite what's been approved by council, be put back on the agenda. It went to the Board of Contract and Supply, referred to finance, and here we are.
Okay. So it went through the Board of Contract and Supply.
It did where it landed here for contracts that had been in a service for us, and some that we may disagree whether or not the council had pre-approved that service. So
Okay.
we're taking it all, and here it is, and we hope to get your approval in moving forward and get bills paid to Conduit that's been held up.
Okay. How much has been held up?
1.4 million.
Okay. Committee members, I believe that, okay, Majority Leader Taylor, I see your hand up.
All right, when was the last time this contract was at the Board of Contract and Supply and approved?
We took this to the Board of Contract and Supply. I see the date of December of 21. But some of this has already been approved, as been indicated by this 3-page travel, 4-page travel, 5-page travel of different components of this contract for different services. but we're trying to complete it all. There's been a dispute of whether or not we could extend the parking and environmental since the contract expired month to month. Solicitor's office has opined that it's legal and binding as we entered into the contract month to month, understanding that it was going to take some time to rebid that parking and environmental services, which is nearly complete and expected to be on the street soon and execute a contract with whatever vendor bids on that piece of service.
I guess I'm gonna bounce a question over to the solicitor, if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
Solicitor, would you like to respond, offer a response to
Well, I'm gonna ask you my
the
question first.
commissioners? Can I ask the solicitor to respond to the commissioner's statement that has been reviewed by the solicitor?
Sure, sure.
And when you say solicitor, I think the commissioner is specifically referring to Jeff Dana. I know Jeff has been involved in this. This is one of the matters that have been under his authority, and he's appeared before this committee, I think before you, Madam Chair, but it was not I, it was Jeff Dana, and if the commissioner wants to
Okay.
clarify.
Okay, Leader Taylor, please continue.
I guess I'll ask my question to Ken Cheverini then. So,
Okay.
Are contracts legal if they're not approved by the Board of Contract and Supply?
Yes, and perhaps no. The question then, did it follow the form? And this is general. There may be a performance issue where one of the parties is operating under the contract, and they may say that they provided some performance and they're due, and they may litigate it and be entitled to it. But when you say legal, the agreement may be legal. I'm not sure if the people who entered into the agreement had the authority to do so, but I'm sure that the individual may argue that they've performed their part of the contract and may seek payment. So, and I'm not trying to skirt the question, but it's a very difficult question to ask. I mean, to answer.
Then one last question, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, if I could ask the
Please
internal
continue.
auditor.
Sure.
If I could ask the internal auditor, is this the same thing that happened a couple of years ago with the same company? As far as the contract was signed without, it shouldn't have been signed, didn't go through the Board of Contract. Remember, we had a problem, I believe it was the same company.
It's the same action, it's a different contract, that's why I raised my hand, and I don't know, I don't want to go before Councilwoman Anthony, but there are actually two different contracts with Conduent, so I'll defer to Councilwoman Anthony, and then I can respond to that, Councilman.
Okay, thank you.
Are you all set, Leader Taylor, for now?
For now, yep.
Thank you. Councilwoman Anthony.
Yes, thank you so much. Just a quick question. So 3 services that Conduent is providing is parking, environmental services, red light camera, and speed camera. Is that correct? Commissioner?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't know who that was directed at. Yes, that's correct.
Sorry. Okay, and can you just tell me a little more about what the parking and enforcement services are? What services they provide?
Parking tickets, essentially, the majority are parking tickets and the servicing of those tickets. So any PEOs or parking enforcement officers and all the handhelds and the process of all those ticketing is that service. The environmental, when folks that have the authority to issue environmental violations, it's a small portion of that, but various violation of environmental violations, they also process that all through the municipal court.
Okay, and the 1 million shortfall right now, is that for all of these services or any particular services?
That's all combined that the city owes Conduit for each of those buckets.
Okay. And then, in terms of cost? I mean, I assume that there's one contract that sets forth how they're reimbursed for each of these, each of the services. Is that what it is, one contract?
There's 3 separate contracts for those 3 separate services.
Okay, and I forgot when the last time is that we saw those. I'm sure you came in with them last time. I just can't remember.
I missed your question. What was
The
your?
contracts, I know that we've seen them before. I don't see them in our packet today. So I was just wondering if they've been provided.
They have. I can provide each of those 3 contracts. I know the internal auditor.
We have 2.
2, I can provide the 3rd. And
That would be great.
yeah, off the top of my head, I don't remember when each of those expire, but 2 have, and 1 continues, as I said, month to month for those parking and environmental ticketing.
Okay, and then I have a question for the internal auditor. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I guess to our great internal auditor, I just, what I'm concerned about is still about how they're charging for their services. So I know we've had questions in the past on the speed cameras, the school speed cameras, and how much, what I thought were very exorbitant charges. And I just, would like to be updated on how they're charging for their services again, because I think it's been a continual issue. And so I guess I'd like to know if the auditor has reviewed those contracts.
Madam Warner?
Yes, Councilman, I have reviewed the contracts, and quite honestly, Elaine has done a very good job in her letter to the board identifying all of the change orders, because it was multiple, and this is not an easy contract. So the last time the contract was approved by the Board of Contract and Supply was in 2018, and they had a per year ticket price. In the 2018 one, the amendment number 6, if in the 5th year, the city said, yes, we're going to do the option years, our per ticket price would have been $2.70 per ticket. Because the city did not respond, they charge us $3.11. And that has been our per ticket price since. Now, if we did do the option years, option year 1 would have been $2.73 instead of $3.11. Option year 2 would have been $2.73 instead of $3.11. So based on us, rather than going month to month, if we just committed to the 2 years, we would have saved $150,000 based on 10,500 tickets per month. Now, the other thing we could have done is go out to bid, which I'm a big supporter of bidding out big projects. We've had them since 2004. Technology improves, more people get into the industry. Let's see who's out there rather than staying with the same vendor and getting stale. So that's my recommendation.
And can I just follow up on that? And why didn't we do the auction?
I can't answer that.
Were we given, I mean, it seems to me, I couldn't agree with you more. This has been a concern of ours on these contracts. And I think they're exorbitant and maybe they're not, but we wouldn't know that unless we went out to bid, right? But I think missing the options so that we could have the 273 instead of 311 is significant. I just don't understand why we didn't exercise those options.
Commissioner, can you offer an explanation for what transpired?
I cannot. So this has been a hodgepodge where it wasn't under the public safety commissioner or even, the police, DPW and the parking administrator. The time Leo Parada was responsible for and under his purview. We have since taken it under public safety, and it'll remain under public safety and the police department. Technically, it's in the police department's budget. So I don't have an answer other than we're trying to fix it. And this is a huge undertaking in drafting an RFP. So we get what we need for this important service. And it's just going to take some time. We're near the end, and we should be putting it out in the streets soon.
Okay, Councilman Ducci, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to voice my same concerns as Councilwoman Anthony did. There's no way that this contract should have not gone out for rebidding process in the matter of time that we've had this contract. I mean, $150,000 to lose $150,000 and nobody overseen that and caught that. Right now, $150,000 to our city is a lot of money, a lot of money. And I wanted to know the percentage, but I heard that already, the percentage, obviously, of what they're getting for the tickets and the red light cameras. As most of you know, right from the beginning, I was not in support of outside contractors doing this type of work anyway, but is the reason why, obviously the reason why they have not been paid the money that's owed is because we wanted to get it to this point first to find out how come it has not been brought back to the Board of Contract and Supplies, correct? It's not like this, it's not like we're just not paying them.
Correct. I saw this as an issue, Councilman, and I asked the treasurer to hold the checks until it was resolved.
Good job, thank you. All set for now, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Taylor, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my grasp around it because internal order, didn't we have the same exact conversation? Correct me if I'm wrong, 3 years ago? It was the same that I remember Jeff Podwell was here. We had to talk about the commissioner signing the contract. He had no right to sign the contract. We owed him money. And I believe at the time the treasurer stopped paying them money at that time. Wasn't going to pay him for the same reason that you are. And I don't understand how 3 years later we're back in the same boat. I mean, before it was actually worse because they were throwing out tickets because they had a problem with the timing or something, if I remember right. And I don't understand, like everyone's saying, why it didn't go either to bid or to the Board of Contract and Supply, and who created the specifications in the beginning from day one.
Is that it? Can you answer that, Commissioner?
I cannot, so there's a lot of questions in that. Padwa's not been the solicitor for 7 years, so he was not here.
He was not the solicitor. He was there as Conduit was his client. And he came in as representing them, and you were the commissioner, and it came in front of you, and that was the problems that we had. That you signed the contract at that time. If I'm wrong, correct me, internal auditor. And we had the same problem, and now here we are 3 years later, and again, $150,000 loss to the city of Providence because of mismanagement, and we still don't have a time frame of when it's going to be fixed. The RFP's there. We don't know when it's going to go out. I mean, how much are we going to do? How much more are we going to keep paying? And then is there any fines for us not paying them? Do we have to, is there any fines for not paying in a certain amount of time? I know I'm loading up with questions, but it's just like,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
let's try to go one question at a time. So, Commissioner, do you want to rephrase some of your questions there? It was kind of a chain.
No, I do understand the gist of his question,
Okay.
and I did sign, I had the authority to sign. He may disagree with that, but I don't sign anything without the law department either consult and approval on that and any subsequent signatures that I've signed month to month, and I didn't do it without the solicitor's office approving that I had the authority and the legal right to do it. He doesn't believe I do. I wouldn't sign unless the lawyer for the city approves both the contract and the authority for me on behalf of the city to sign.
Do you have a follow-up question, Councilman Taylor?
No, because I'm really, answers I'm getting answers, because he's saying that he wasn't there. It was Leo Parada, and that wasn't the truth, because I specifically remember him being there at that time. And I would hope that other finance committee members remember the conversations that we had. So it seems to me like he's trying to throw the ball in someone else's court when it's his responsibility.
I just want to ask the question, under your testimony, you stated that you weren't responsible for this contract. It had kind of migrated to you, that DPW had responsibility. When did it go from when did it go from DPW to public safety? Do you remember what year that was?
Let me try to clarify. This contract's been in place for, I don't know if it's 2004, but this has been in the city for a long time. Obviously, it wasn't here, and the contract was signed, and there's a travel to that particular service in that contract. I signed once it expired or about to expire.
When was that?
A year ago, 18 months, without looking at the documents, and the contract was going to end, and the service would end unless we entered into an agreement, and we did. I signed with, as I said, the solicitor's office involvement and obviously legal approval that it's lawful and I can sign on behalf of the city of Providence with the intention of bidding this thing and understanding that the original RFP and the scope has changed drastically in 10 or 15 years that we're providing the service. So
Thank you.
when it did, it gets shifted around that time, and this came up and we pulled all the, I wasn't involved in the red light camera. I wasn't involved, I didn't negotiate it. It was under the administrator, under DPW, who had since pulled it, and it's under the police department for budgetary and revenue purposes. And I've taken the responsibility of being the person engaged in, both negotiating and signing the contract on behalf of the city.
Okay, General Treasurer, do you have
I just
anything you'd like
have,
to
obviously,
comment?
the Board of Contract and Supply approves all contracts over $5,000. There's no exception to that, in my opinion. I understand that the solicitor gave you advice that you could sign. I absolutely disagree with that, but let's just say that's correct. So by not bidding it, you go to finances. It costs the taxpayers $150,000 at a minimum. So I just don't know why we just don't go to the Board of Contract Supply and bid things out. Doesn't make any sense. And I've been, for the 22 years that I've been here, I've been locking down the Board of Contract and Supply. It's public, it's transparent, and it keeps everyone out of trouble, to be honest with you. So there's a board. The board is highly respected. Many people are on there. Go to the Board of Contract and Supply. I don't know what the issue is. It costs the taxpayers at least $150,000. And in my opinion, it's unacceptable. Had I not done it, everybody in the city would have been all over me for not doing it. But
Okay,
thank you.
the auditor has asked to follow the treasurer's comments.
Yes.
Madam Auditor,
The Board of
please.
Contract and Supply is in the city charter, just like any appointed position. It is its own body. It has its own rules. The law department signs off as to form, not the content. I have, just so the committee knows, I have a question out to the city solicitor to ask exactly that question. When you sign off as to form, because that's what all the document states that he signs, do you tell them it needs Board of Contract and Supply approval? That was March 10th. Unfortunately, he never responds to me. So I tried to get this resolved beforehand, but I cannot, because I get zero response from him, and I am in a appointed position just like him, just like you, Commissioner. It needs to be followed. It's its own body. This is absolutely bad management, and I know that this was not originally your contract, so I understand that, but it was been 3 years. It hasn't been 1, it's been 3. It's just very, very frustrating, because if you read section 1006 in the home rule charter, who becomes personally responsible for making these bad decisions? It's absolutely ridiculous and it's repetitive. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Nanducci, you have your hand up and you've been patient. I thank you.
Thank you. I find it odd that the commissioner just made a comment that how things have dramatically changed in the prior years moving forward. I think that's even more of a reason where this particular contract should be rebid out and rebrought right from the start of the process. There's no reason why any company should hold a contract that long without going through, again, the rebidding process and renegotiating of a contract and give other people the opportunity to come forward and see what they can do. As far as month to month, I don't think anybody should be giving anyone the authority to sign a contract this big month to month. I don't care if it's the solicitor or not. And as you can tell, the solicitor is not answering our internal audited questions. So here we go back to, day one with these problems. The commissioner does his thing. The solicitor doesn't want to respond and hold anybody responsible. I will not be supporting this tonight, unless we move forward on rebidding the whole process. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Taylor, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I
You
just
all
wanted to
set?
clarify.
Okay.
Yes, I wanted to just clarify something, that it was actually March of 2019. I found my notes that the amended conduit contract without board approval for the speed camera increased the per ticket violation. So that's when it was, March 2019, because that's when we were throwing the tickets out. It just started. They were throwing tickets out because they were, I think it was the wrong time or the price was wrong or something. And I had a price of $170,000 on that at that point. It was March of 2019, not a year ago. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Anthony. You're muted.
Sorry, I guess
Councilor.
I'd like to ask the question moving forward. How long we're contractually obligated on these three contracts? I mean, I don't know where we are now in terms of our ability to terminate and whether we're able to do that or not. I was hoping someone would be able to answer that question.
City Solicitor? Are you familiar with the contract?
I'm
enough
not
to tell
familiar
us
with
where
it.
we're-
I
Okay.
certainly can review it and reply back, but I do not even have the contract. So
Okay.
maybe
So
the commissioner knows.
I would just like to follow
Councilman,
up.
continue. Yeah.
And just say, we really need some sort of answer, I think, maybe from the city solicitor or Mr. Cheverini, where we are with these contracts and how we can, terminate them if it is all possible. And you're right, I kind of agree with Councilman Narducci, that we need to start all over here and possibly think about someone else that can manage the contract, some other entity within the city.
Okay, thank you. I tend to agree with all the council members on. I do recognize that you ended up winning this contract, but nonetheless, there's too many unanswered questions here. But more importantly, we've got a vendor that is owed $1.4 million under whatever contract was signed. So I'm concerned about that. What I'm hearing is, I think we need to ask this solicitor, the city solicitor, Jeff Dana's opinion on how to move forward with this contract at this juncture. I think this body would like to see the contracts. We're talking about contracts we don't even have the benefit of really scrutinizing. And it does need to go out to bid. I think those are that's what I've heard. Committee members, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think those are the things that we need to address and focus on to move this thing forward.
That's exactly how I feel.
Treasurer? Okay, Councilwoman Anthony and Taylor, you good with that? Vice Chair Castillo, does that make sense to everybody, or anybody got another idea?
Am I off? Am I
Yeah.
off if I make a motion that it goes out to bid?
Well,
Well, let's just, hold on, let's get consensus
I'm
on
just
what we feel we need to accomplish.
Okay, I'm just asking.
and we have to understand any penalties and fines and things like that. I mean, we
Yeah.
can't just make a motion on this when we're not really understanding exactly what our legal obligations are, in my opinion.
I guess we could make a motion to
Treasurer,
continue the
well,
matters.
let's get Treasurer Lombardi's opinion, because I'm concerned about making sure if we have an obligation that is satisfied. So where is that and how do we accomplish that?
So my understanding is that this is on a month-to-month contract. Is that correct?
On parking
Yes.
and environmental only, the other
Okay.
two not, right?
Okay, so why are the other two before us?
They've been before you. I
No,
believe,
are they before us tonight?
well, they are before you because the internal auditor wanted to take all conduit contracts before this body.
Okay.
Otherwise, in my opinion, not the lawyer in the room, this body has already approved various components of speed and red light. So
Right.
we're under contract for those two services for a period of time, 1 year, and then 2 more, I believe, is off the top of my recollection. Speed is 2 more years and red is 1. Whereas when Councilman Taylor wants to go out to bid and others would like to, I'm assuming it's the parking. And I can assure you that internally, we are prepared to publicize an RFP within 30 days.
Okay.
I've been personally involved. I've invited the internal auditor to be involved, and which she declined because it's not her role. But I'm not here to say, hey, just kick this. I can assure you that we are nearly complete with an RFP, and that piece will go out to bid. And hopefully by July 1, we'll have responses.
And I think, Madam Chair,
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think that's why we asked for this to go on hold until we get some answers from the solicitor, Jeff Dana, also.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, very much so. I think that's what my comments were in summarizing everyone's thoughts. We do need an opinion from Jeff Dana to provide direction on how to move on this. There's been some bumps, obviously. I do want to address the contract in its form, whatever form it is. There's 3 different components to it. I want to get the vendor paid if appropriate. So I'm going to ask the treasurer to give us some guidance on that. So it's already going to the solicitor. Let's talk about getting the vendor paid. What steps do we need to take to make that happen?
So ultimately, the vendor will be paid. Right now, I know that you used the number 1.4 million. That's not what we're holding. I think we're holding a couple of $100,000. And that's because of the contract not being approved by the Board of Contract and Supply and going on a month-to-month basis. The red light, we have paid, to the best of my knowledge, or released. I don't know who's paid them, but we released the checks on red lights and speed. We're only holding parking that I know of, and I believe it's a couple of $100,000. So I think that's a good hold right now. And the hold is to make sure that we follow the Board of Contract and Supply, and that we force whatever entities that we need internally or externally to follow the Board of Contract and Supply. So and I agree, at least on the parking, we must go out to bid. But if we can if we can do everything in one shot, obviously that would be the preference, but we need to hear from the solicitor first.
Okay, so I think what we need to do is, Gina, excuse me, Auditor, do you need to weigh in?
No, just my recommendation is to hold all parking checks until we hear from the solicitor. Otherwise, we may never hear from him.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's entertain a motion to continue this matter to allow Jeff Dana the opportunity to review the contract and provide an opinion and directions as to how to move forward. We're requesting an RFP on this, and that everything goes before the Board of Contracts and Supply, which is the standard in the city. So it's kind of like a threefold request, but I think it's a motion to continue to allow this work to happen. But it is defined. So it's a review and opinion from the Solicitor Dana, request for an RFP for this business. It's been kind of bumping along. That needs to happen. And all of the contracts over the appropriate limit, which is what, $5,000, needs to go to the Board of Contract and Supply. We keep seeing that over and over and over again. So that's our message on this. Is that acceptable to the committee? Does that seem like?
Madam Chair?
Leader?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. Leader Taylor, please.
Can we add one thing, that next time we meet, that we have these contracts and look at them so we actually know when they do expire, and what is in them, so we have time to read them over, because now nobody has them. So if we could add that in there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. So in addition,
not
we asked Councilman Narducci.
I'm sorry, I just want to add it, not on hour 24, if we could have it a few days before the meeting, so we can.
Yeah, so, yep, I completely agree with you, sir. So the review, the ask for Jeff Dana is for a review and a recommendation or direction, as well as to provide with his guidance on the contracts for the committee's review prior to us scheduling the meeting. Okay, so I think that's how it plays out. Sound good to everybody?
Madam
Vice
Chair.
Chair, may I have that motion as stated?
So moved.
Motion
Second.
made by Vice Chair Castillo,
Second
seconded
motion.
by Councilman Taylor and Narducci. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we'll get our arms around this finally. I appreciate your testimony, Commissioner. Okay, that takes us to item 2. Madam Clerk, could you kindly read item 2 into the record?
Resolution authorizing approval of the following piggyback contract award for the Sourcewell contract number 010720 by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with section 21-26B1 of the Code of Ordinance. Axon Enterprises Incorporated, $6,367,915.51, Department of Public Safety.
Isn't this exciting? We have the contract. Who is going to speak on this? Our wonderful chief, Hugh Clements. Please.
Madam Chair, fellow council, fellow city officials and staff, thank you for the opportunity to come before this panel requesting the approval to piggyback the Sourcewell contract with our Axon Enterprise for the amount of $6.367 million for a 5-year period. As we all know, in the last several years, there have been calls for police departments, mainly in urban communities, to move towards body-worn cameras. We've been operational with body-worn cameras in the city of Providence for many years. We know, we like to say, we took the lead back in 2015. We began conversations and later a pilot program and fully enacted body-worn cameras in 2017. So this contract is up. We're before this panel now for this contract, which will give us 375 new tasers, 39 additional cameras, virtual reality training package, Axon Performance, which is the compliance and audit portion of the technology, redaction assistance, which is a major feature that we deal with almost on a every other day basis, and third-party storage. And I stand to answer any granular questions regarding each of those. But so it's for the new 5-year contract with an addition of 39 new cameras, and like I said, the 375 new tasers. The tasers that we have been employing in the city are outdated. They're 10 years old, the technology. We've had them for 5 years. The Exxon company will no longer upgrade those systems. They will no longer fix damaged units. And they're just outdated, and that leads to the potential for police officers to get hurt. Or when we're going to be using force as opposed to less lethal force, it puts us in a more tenuable position in exacting force. So around the country, they're going to this newer taser feature, and it has some unbelievable features, state of the art.
Wonderful. How many units do you have? How many?
Tasers, 300, and so this will give us 375. Years ago, when I was a young sergeant, our first less lethal weaponry, we had probably a dozen on any given occasion. And if we had a need for one on each side, we would have to wait 15 minutes for someone to cross the city. So the best practice around the country was to put less lethal weaponry on every police officer to avoid confrontations with a firearm. And it's been so beneficial to us. As we know, our use of restraint in this city with firearms is phenomenal. I have that data if need be. In the last 5 years, there's been 2 years where we haven't fired one bullet. There's been 1 year where we fired one. We just had a recent event, which was an outlier, where we were shot at with over 120 some rounds, and we returned with over 100, but that was one incident. But my point is, it is a rare occasion. We use tremendous restraint, and I think a big component of the technology that we have is the tasers. It allows us the ability in a use of force situation to not pull our firearm and to pull the taser.
Okay. Councilman Taylor, I see your hand up.
Chief, I had a quick question that I saw recently. I don't know what some police department had it. It was actually, it looked like a taser, but it shot out a rope or something. I couldn't figure it out. And it like wrapped around either their legs or their arms or anything. It looked like something like new technology. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, and we're constantly looking at new technology and sharing notes with our colleagues regionally around the country. That's the Bowler Wrap. It's we've looked at it. We're exploring that, where it's almost like you can corral a suspect with the wrap from a distance, and that way you don't have to go hands-on with that individual. It's very interesting technology, and yes, we're actively looking at that.
Okay, I just didn't know if you heard about it or it seemed to me like it's something new, and I don't even know if departments have it yet. So
we may be coming before this board for that. It's a nice piece of technology for us.
All set, Councilman
Thank you.
Taylor?
Yes, thank you.
Senior Leader Narducci, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just more a comment than anything. Again, I want to thank Chief Clemens for all the hard work you do in the city with the men and women of our police department. Unfortunately, it's only when we have an incident of wrong or expected wrong that anybody hears about what happens with our police department. Nobody hears how you just explained what you explained, Chief, on how many times our men and women are fired upon and how resistant they are to fire back. I know that situation over here in my neighborhood on Denison Street, for the amount of shots that the victim turned on our officers. Number one, I just thank God nobody was hurt. None of our people were hurt. And the reframe of return fire was absolutely incredible. So again, I'm just proud to be a supporter of the men and women of the Providence Police Department. And again, I just want to say thank you to Chief Clemens. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senior Leader Narducci. Councilwoman Anthony, you have your hand up.
Yes, Colonel, thank you so much and the Commissioner for what you do for our city. I have just wanted to make sure that this amount of money was included in the budget. for the equipment? The budget we approved last
It is in
year?
the budget. Correct, Elaine, it's in the budget, yes.
Yeah, so this, Councilwoman, this is it's a 5-year contract, and, what I did was actually spread it out over a 6-year period pending budget approval for 5 of the 6 years. So in this, budget year, we have, $448,000 approved, and, I, made an agreement with the contractor to do a 90-day payment plan. So the first payment is $318,000, and then the next payment would occur in FY '23 of 1.273. So we spread it out over a 6-year period instead of the 5-year period.
Great,
So
great.
that way it would conform with what was approved in this year's fiscal approved budget.
Thank you. And then the other question is, how long is this equipment supposed to last?
Well, our current equipment, we have, we can trade it in within here. Colonel, did Officer to check out mention that to you? I think it's every 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and the durability of this product is strong, and when some of the products are damaged or lost or broken and need to be fixed, they're very prompt with their response back to the Providence Police.
Thank you. That's
And
all
I might add, I mean, some of the features are incredible. One I have to speak about in Lord is as part of this package, they threw in the virtual reality training package, which includes 18 virtual reality headsets with 6 virtual reality controllers, Microsoft tablets. So we can take those features anywhere. We can take men and women off the street to train in the auditorium, up at the academy, in the field, in the substations. And it's a great savings cost to the city in that we don't have to take everyone up to Situate to our firearms range to train and pay them overtime on an off shift. If we're over minimum manning, we can take 10 officers off the street, train them for an hour, have them put the virtual reality headset on. It trains them in up-to-date real-life situations on domestic violence, people in the midst of a mental health episode or crisis. And I've done it myself. It's phenomenal training, and that's included in this contract.
Thank you.
You're all set, Councilwoman. Senior Leader Narducci, I see your hand is still up. Do you have another question?
No, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. Okay, Madam Auditor, do you have any concerns relative to this contract?
I have one concern. Sorry. The piggyback that you did, their contract expires in 3 years. Is there any reason you didn't just stick with their piggyback? Why did you go the 5 years instead of sticking to 3 with the Sourcewell expiration?
Elaine,
I can answer that. So in the actual contract, there is a state.
We do not have an actual contract. We have an amendment.
Okay,
So
so
it's-
there's an actual signed contract. I can forward that to you. So I actually had them add a statement in there that they would conform to the pricing of the throughout the whole 5-year contract.
So again, I'm gonna ask this question. In 3 years, how can you be sure that this product wouldn't be at a lower cost, or that the technology of another vendor may not have come into play and been more competitive to drive the cost down? 5 years is an awful long time.
So, and the Colonel can attest to this, there are many factors that weigh in if we do switch to another competitor, and he can answer that. Colonel, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, yes, I will. So great question and a good point. Presently, at this moment, this is a far superior product. And you're right, maybe 5 years from now, it may not be. But this is the lead company, far superior at the moment. Presently, and we forecast going forward, it will be a much greater cost to the city, even 3 or 5 years from now, and with far less efficiency. And in particular, if we were to switch at any point in time, whether it be now or 5 years from now, we'd have to retrain 450 officers. And that's a huge cost in itself. The taser that is accompanied in this body worn camera contract is not compatible with any of those other companies, vendors, which is a big feature. Also, with this product, anytime and this is a relatively new feature, obviously every time you pull the taser, the body worn camera automatically activates. As well, for the first time, anytime you pull your firearm, as soon as you pull it out of the holster, it has a sidearm release, the body worn camera automatically activates. That is not the case with the lead vendor at this moment, WatchGuard. So they're way behind the curve of this company. And as well, we have unlimited third-party storage with Axon. That is not the case with the other lead vendor. There were 3 large vendors in play in the beginning. One has been bought out by Axon because they're the lead company. The other lead vendor does not have the ability for third-party storage. And I'll tell you why that's important. With many of our crimes and criminal events, we get video footage from citizens. We had one last night at Waterplace Park where we ended up with some great surveillance video that now we can incorporate into our report, into our BCI logging system, into our evidence.com. And this has a feature where it retains in the cloud all of that third-party video storage. So could there be 3 years, 5 years out? Maybe, but it would still be a huge cost to switch to a different company, whether it be next year or 5 years.
So, Madam Chair, if my final recommendation would be to have a 3-year contract with 2 1-year options. Again, you're tying the hands of the future administration. However, it is whatever this committee so chooses. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Solicitor, have you had an opportunity to review this contract? This
No,
addendum?
I haven't. I believe my office has. I mean, I think the Colonel could attest to that.
Okay. Committee, what's your pleasure on this? Any thoughts, concerns?
I would, Madam Chair, I would have to agree with the internal audit moving forward.
I also
Is
agree.
that, thank you, Senior Leader. Is that something that you can live with, the adjustment as stated by the auditor? Is that something that you could agree to?
The 3 1-1? Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
we do, yes, but we do
So
get that
basic-
price because it will change if it goes to 3 1-1. Including the addition of the virtual reality training component. They threw that in there for us.
Councilwoman Anthony?
You're muted.
Councilwoman Anthony?
Thank you. We need to make sure we know what the effect will be in terms of cost and additions. I mean, we have to know what the consequences are of that decision.
What about a 3-year matching the piggyback on Sourcewell? Sourcewell is a 3-year piggyback, right? That goes out for 3 years. Why don't you match that and then go out again for 3 more years? So it's essentially 2 3 years as opposed to doing 3, 1 and 1 to get to 5. That may help you negotiate this contract. Does that sound like something that you could look at?
Yes.
And inform the committee? Okay, so Councilman Anthony, still have your hand up? Old hand, new question? Okay, so I think based on our committee discussion, why don't we continue this matter tonight and ask to match the Sourcewell piggyback 3-year period and look at renegotiating this contract, maybe with a structure of 3 and 3, and see how that works. Would that be something that you can come back to us with? Okay.
Yes, but again, I mean, there's some great features that they've given us with this 5-year deal, so.
Well, we can ask. Okay. Let's have a motion to continue and request that the chief go back to this company and see if he can renegotiate the contract. Motion
Second.
made by Vice Chair Castillo,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Narducci, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay. Thank you. And the last item we have, please read into the record, item 3. Madam Clerk, if you could kindly read that.
Communication from Gina M. Costa, internal auditor dated January 28th, 2022, submitting a review of total contracts conducted by the Office of the Internal Auditor. The period of review is FY 2019 through October 2021, with a recommendation to review further.
Thank you. Okay, so this matter, we have paperwork before us. Apparently, the auditor reviewed this contract and had some findings which were of concern to her relative to the payments and the pricing. And that's why it is before us today. I think I'd like to start out with the auditor because this audit report essentially started this discussion. So please tell us what prompted you to look at this? Is it a matter of, regular business? What prompted you to look at it? What did you find? Please inform the committee.
Yes, so I'm part of the pre-board members, and we review all of the contracts that go before the Board of Contract and Supply. So a request to pay this vendor, State Towing, $99,000 for October. So it was kind of alarming. It's a request to pay. So I asked what the issue was, went back to Alejandro, who is our Associate Director of Purchasing, and he said he would bring it back to the department, and he did. He advised them, given the significant amount compared to the original amount in the contract, so he was sort of alarmed too. But the department didn't do anything, despite the fact that it was this alarming large amount beyond the amount of their budget. So I reached out to the deputy in December and I asked her, can you please review these numbers? I think something is wrong. They're awfully high. I said, if you don't want to, please forward them to me and I will be happy to do it. And that's the option she chose. So I reviewed it. I got the numbers from the contract and they were significantly higher. If you look at my report, the bids show there were 2 contractors awarded and one contractor bid $35. Let me get to the page, I'm sorry.
Yeah, help us by telling us what page.
On page 2,
Thank you.
those are the breakdown of the bids. State Towing bid $35 per tow in the city, in the city only, anytime during the day. Colette's bid higher. So the issue I had was with State Towing because that was the request to pay for $99,000. So I went back further, only because in July, they made a lump sum payment of $186,000. So looking at the invoices, they were charging all different amounts. I gave a couple in this report, but they were charging $5,000, $4,000. There was no rhyme or reason to the purchases. To the billing. Again, I asked them to look at it first and I got no response. So in order to get vendors paid, unfortunately, this is what you have to do. You have to kick it up to the finance committee and bring the department in. This is where I am right now, to get this bill paid. And I don't even know if that's even possible. Do we gotta go to legal? I don't know what the options are. To continue, the commissioner was on 10 News conference and stated in that conference that this is beyond the scope of that bid. I followed up with the letter and I asked, can you please provide me with the other contract and I will correct my report. I did not get an answer to that. nor did the council president on his requested information. So I would just like answers. And that's where I am.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. I see, Leader Taylor, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, yes, I'd just like to follow up on that news conference. I saw that episode, and they asked the commissioner about this. You know, they talked about the contracts and what was going on because it was all over the news. And the commissioner answered. He stated that it was political. So I'll give an answer after I ask him a question. Can he explain that comment, why he said that comment, what he meant by that comment? And then I'll explain my thoughts afterwards. So I guess
would you like to respond to that?
the question would be to the question be to the commissioner, is he stated on the news thing that it was political, and I'd like him to explain that comment. What was his thinking on that? Why did he feel that way? What the basic question.
Madam Chair, shall I give the history or you want me to answer directly?
Answer the question, please. Sure.
So I think it's political because this body, not you, pushed out a letter to me that the media had before I did. And then it drew some interest in the perception that something inappropriate or illegal was done. To me, and Madam Auditor worked in my office and was a part of the systems that for several years. This isn't anything new. This is something that we, the Providence Police Department, has provided a service to. So when I believe that when the media gets it simultaneously or before I'm even aware of the allegations in that letter, it does turn political. So that was the reason of my response.
I may follow because I didn't want to say anything so he answer, but seeing that and other lay people watching that, me personally, and it had nothing to do with me, but it felt to me that you were calling out the internal auditor because she was actually doing her job, because that's what she's hired for, is do the checks and balances and work with the city council. And I don't see anything political about it. There was something wrong. She said something and it came out to the media. God knows who came out to the media. Someone in your office could have given it to the media. Who knows? You know what I mean? You don't know who the media is, but to make a statement that it's political, I felt that you were downgrading the internal auditor's job of what she should be doing on the checks and balances. Obviously, the spotlight was on you, and let's defer it to someone else. But I felt bad that that it came out that way, because it looked like the internal auditor was being political when in reality she was doing her job with the checks and balances. And I appreciate that, and I want to go on record and say that, because being in the finance committee, everybody in this committee that is here and who was here bring up things that are questionable. So just because we bring them up doesn't mean it's political. Whether it's the chairwoman or the chairman or council people that bring up things, we're asking these questions because that's what this committee is for checks and balances on spending. We need to know where the money's going for the constituents in the city. And I was taken back and very disappointed with that comment. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Narducci, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. If you look at it, it does appear and it does look like something illegal was done. I'm looking at a $5,000 tow, a $3,000 tow. How the hell did we ever okay tows that high to be paid? I'm assuming, Commissioner, you're the one that oversees this process. You are the commissioner. Correct me if I'm wrong on this particular process. And it just, by looking at what I'm looking at quickly here, there's numerous tows from this particular company that were made that were always over the $35 contracted agreement. And it's been like that for quite a while. So obviously, somebody dropped the ball, and I want to thank our internal auditor for getting it to this point. We won't bring up how many things we find out politically in the press, because that's a totally different story. But what upsets me with things like this, Madam Chair, and I'm just please give me a couple of minutes. What upsets me with things like this, it affects the taxpayers here in the city of Providence where we live. Unlike, and excuse me, Commissioner, unlike yourself and stuff that does not live in Providence, it affects us. It affects a lot of people that work 2 and 3 different jobs to put food on their table. So anything like this, when I see a $90,000 1-month towing bill, do you know it would take a constituent of mine probably 4 or 5 years to make $90,000? And, you know, I would just like to have some type of explanation on how 5,000 and 3,000, and then, like I said, and I know I'm repeating myself, but $85, $100. Where's the $35 agreement for the tows? Thank you, Madam Chair. If that question could be answered, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd just like to add some color to this discussion. So this contract went out to bid. We got some bids back on, you know, it all looks in order. There's 2 companies that bid, Coletta and State. It appears that we've got, the auditor found a number of invoices that are clearly, as my colleagues have identified as well, based on the package we provided, beyond the stated bid amount. So really, that's the question I'd like to get answered now. What happened here? Why are we paying more, or being asked to be paid more than this job was bid out for? So I don't know whether that's Councilman Narducci?
And how long it's been going on for, and I mean, yeah,
Okay.
By the company
Well,
that's involved, you could call it political.
Okay, so we've got the report in front of us, so let's work with what we have. So let's get an answer from the commissioner or the deputy commissioner. How has this happened? Why are these bills coming in higher? That was, you know, the reason you go out to bid is so that you can control your costs. Clearly, we're not controlling our costs here, and I'd like to understand what happened.
So thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Because on its face, you know, it looks like we're wasting money, but I can tell you that we're not. I've been here 11 years, and we've done port tows, and I want to explain what a port tow is.
Say that again, please, a port tow?
Port. So they're commonly referred to as a port. And why that is, prior to me getting here, a junk that are in our community got towed down to the port of Providence. And DPW disposed of those. 20 years ago, the colonel was here before but I'll speak to my tenure. So in 11 and a half years, or 11 years, we've done port tows. We have a police officer assigned to port tows. And a port tow is when there's a vehicle, a trailer, a boat, junk, either on public property or private property, that we get complaints by this council, by the community, by the police department of a nuisance, that a vehicle is sitting, and it's been there, and it's abandoned, and it probably has a little of no value. State Towing has been doing the port tows since I've been here. Prior to me and the fleet manager at the time when I first got here, they went out and tried to solicit bids for a port tow. It's not a simple vehicle. that you tow back to your yard as a vendor, and you get paid for that service. The contract that the internal auditor and you all have pointed to it does not cover port tows. So when you have a trailer that is full of construction debris, tires, used oil, all kinds of things that are in these vehicles, those are the kinds of things that under this service in the port tows is what we call a vendor, state towing, that's provided that. And state towing removes that vehicle and then has to give notice and follows the state law. They are under the purview as a towing vendor under the PUC, so there are guidelines that they need to follow. So when there's a boat full of debris, and these, not many, but there are boats in which we tow and ask the vendor to remove.
Madam
and
Chair,
all the kinds of things that are in these vehicles. So
Let's let him finish, Councilman, and I'll go right back to you, okay, sir? Please continue.
So, you know, the allegation that either I allowed a inappropriate charge and a reimbursement for services that are rendered are wrong. This vendor has provided a service to the city, cleaning up the city for 11 plus years. And the cost to this vendor in disposing some hazardous material and other materials that are in these vehicles are expensive. And that's what we're paying for.
But it wasn't bid out.
It was not bid out. It hasn't been bid out in the 11 years that I've been there. The fleet manager has bid an RFP'd it and got no responses. You know, when I came here, I have meetings with all our vendors. So the vendors that tow for the city, not under that contract, but there's a crash and the vehicle has to be removed. That's a service contract that we engage. There were 15 when I got here. I think there's 11 or 12. They have to meet certain conditions. And we have the ability to either remove when we've had bad vendors towing for the city and don't meet our standards, and we've removed them from our tow list. This is completely different. This is a service that this vendor, who also happens to be on the tow vending list, so he gets called in a rotation along with the other 12 for other. On port tows, we have a full-time police officer that removes between 600 and 800 vehicles a year. And this vendor has provided that service. And those costs that you see is as a result of debris that are in that vehicle that people just abandon and throw tires and other debris that this vendor then has to properly dispose of. So if I can just, you know, if I insulted you with my comments about it being political, that wasn't intended and it wasn't at you. Understand, it's the media. I'm frustrated because all of a sudden it's in the public domain that I or the police department or this vendor did something inappropriate. And that's the furthest from the truth. So-
Okay,
well,
let him finish, please.
So I have since worked with the law department in trying to, so we got this contract that's in place until July 1.
What contract?
The contract you just referenced.
It doesn't have the port tow, which is
Doesn't
the
have
issue.
port tows. It has city vehicles that need to be towed, ATVs that need to be towed. I had no involvement in the RFP or the execution of that contract. And so the port tow issue, and I tried to explain it, it's not applicable to that contract. And so you are not going to get a vendor to pull a boat for 110 or a trailer for 110, because it's not just a simple removal and dispose of that particular boat trailer, these things are full of trash that needs to be properly disposed of. So this vendor has provided that, and it's a great service, because if we didn't have it, we'd have a lot of vehicles and debris in our community that would look horrible.
Thank you. Councilman Narducci, thank you for your patience. You
Thank you,
have your
Madam.
hand up. Please
Thank you, Madam
continue.
Chair. Yeah, I just find it odd that these portos, if we don't go out to bid, how are we gonna find out if nobody else would bid on them, number one? The other thing is that, and I'm glad you mentioned it, we don't see any type of contract here for those particular tows. And I think we're going, again, I'm looking at receipts that say $55 for a regular tow. It doesn't say nothing about a port tow. It says about a vehicle. Why was something like that okay if the contract reads $35 car tows? So yeah, it does look like somebody did something wrong, or somebody's trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes by the information we have in front of us. And it's the oversight has to be much better. And I think even the port tows, and I do understand what a port tow is. And I think me and my colleagues at one point in time have called for numerous types of port tows. But the contractor himself, he also knows what he's getting into when he accepts the port tows. Like I said, I just think the oversight, the ball has been dropped on the oversight on these particular contracts, and we have to do something to look into. I thought we had a fleet mechanic that kind of got fired, and we had to pay a certain amount to him, and I would wonder why. We never had the opportunity. That never came before the claims committee. We never had an opportunity to even vent that out amongst us. I don't know if maybe the reason why he got told to take a walk is because he knew some things that maybe nobody wanted him to know. That's my personal feelings, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience. Leader Taylor, you have your hand up.
Yes, so I was wondering how many abandoned vehicles roughly have been towed for the last 5 years? Do we know?
3,000.
3,000? Okay. And
So it's about 600 to 800 a year.
So 600-800 a year. And how many is this contract different than the snow or accidents? Or is it all combined together?
Yeah, so that's part of the confusion, that our service contracts, so the people that tow for us, city doesn't pay them anything. They have to meet our, first of all, they're controlled by PUC, they're a tow vendor, so they have to meet the regulations under the state law and PUC. So there's the tow vendors that want to tow for the city of Providence, crashes and all those other things that we have, as I said, I think 11 presently on our list. And we rotate through because it's lucrative for them, and they get crashes and they repair the vehicles and they generate business. And so that it's not a contract, it's a service agreement. And if they don't respond timely, or they do something that disparages the city, hire a criminal that tows and then steals from the car, which we've had, we bounce them off our list. So there's no contract for that service. It's a service contract. So, leaving that aside, that's who we use when we have a tow van and have to tow vehicles. Those 11 provide that service. There's this contract that went out to bid that the internal auditor spoke of. Those are for fleet vehicles in the city that need to be towed, including ATVs by contract. So that contractor in the second Colettas that bid on it, that's a fee for service. This port tow is completely different than those two others that I just referenced.
Okay, and I guess my last question would be, is there a price cap that they're allowed to charge? Because obviously we go from $50, and it looks like they didn't go to the port. They went back to Buckland Street. Then we had 70 back to Buckland. We had 80 back to Buckland. Back to the shop. I don't see any port tows at all, but is there a cap that they cannot charge? I mean, because we're going from $50 to $5,000.
So
It's a big
the port tows, so the vendor removes the vehicle, and then that vehicle goes on port tows. That vehicle goes back to the yard of that vendor. And then there's a process that that vendor needs to notify by certified letter, the owner of the vehicle, if it can be found. And a lot of these, this vehicle's been sold 15 times since the last registered owner, don't know who it is, and it's got a load of crap in it. Asbestos, I've already, described what's in these vehicles and vans. He can't just put it into the dumpster and dump it into the landfill. He has to process that legally and get rid of it, and there's a cost to that, and that cost is reflected. Why is it $5,000? Because they had $4,000 of disposal fees for that port tow.
Right, I understand that, but why isn't that put in the receipt of each one? In other words, I've had State Tow and Tow several boats and several RVs. And I know they were full of junk paint and everything, but why isn't that put in the thing? Said, towed RV from such and such a place, was full of paint, had to do environmental, and have like a breakdown of price instead of just towing charge $5,000. No, this should be broken down to the tow was this, to get rid of the environmental stuff was this, you know what I mean? And then I think there would be less questions. If it's labeled that way.
I do, and about a year ago, we called the vendor in for a more specific accounting for these tows and the property or debris that's in those tows. I've never believed that he was gouging or charging.
I'm not saying he's gouging. I'm just saying
No, I know that.
Like anything else, I think it should be an itemized bill. And say, okay, this is what it is. And then say, okay, but to say 5,000 towing charge, and we used, obviously a wrecker is less than using a flatbed. I know that from AAA and everything, but if you had an itemized bill, I think it would be easier to look at. And I think the internal auditor, I'm not trying to do her job, but I think she would say, okay, this is what it's for.
Fair enough, and I wasn't suggesting that you were alleging that he was gouging. I'm telling you that with my review and my deputy review of the invoices, I have not one time believed that he was charging fees that were inappropriate or gouging. That's my belief, and if I thought differently, I would have criminally investigated or had him criminally investigated. There's a lot of work that's being done, and we have a full-time police officer, as I said, he tags 2,100 vehicles a year. It works because 2/3 of those vehicles end up moving, and we don't have to deal with 2,100. We deal with 600 or 800 that get towed, and of the 600 or 800, there's probably 250 that ends up getting crushed and disposed of, and all the things that I've said. So I did not accuse her.
No, it's fine. But by you looking at these, you're the overseer of these bills, basically, because it falls under your tenure. Didn't you realize, obviously, if one year we're paying $9,000 to one and then $29,000 to the other, wouldn't that throw a red flag and say, why is one getting 29? Why is one, or why are the prices? I guess from what I'm hearing is the price has been going up over the last 5 years. And I know costs have gone up over the 5 years, but some of them are going up a lot more. So
Yeah,
why
I
would
mean, so when Major Levery was here, our administrative major, we had that vendor in just for that reason. We had a uptick, and I don't know why people were dumping crap in the city. We had a uptick and had the vendor in to explain why such a uptick in charges. And we reviewed invoices with him, with Major Leopard, and with my deputy, Richards, in the paperwork wasn't where it should have been, and he was told that he needs to account, and he began taking photographs and being more responsive to reflect the charges in which he was bringing.
I guess my last question, Madam Chair, I promise. Why wouldn't you communicate that to the internal auditor? In other words, you know that, if you're questioning it, I would think you think she's going to question it. So let me have her in the meeting at that time, or at least communicate what's going on. So we're not here today discussing this. A year or two later.
So she communicated with Elaine, the internal auditor, and Elaine verbally explained everything. Now, I think the misunderstanding that you have a contract here and you're not following it, and he's charging exorbitant fees for a tow. Now, as I've explained, this is a port tow, and it's not as a result of the fleet manager signing a contract for a simple $100 tow. That was the explanation, and it's brought us here. And I meant no disrespect to you or anyone else. I take umbrage with an allegation that me, my deputy, the police department, or this vendor has done something inappropriate. And that was the tone of the letter that I received from this council.
Okay, folks, what I'd like to we're arguing, we spent quite a deal of time talking about a port tow that is clearly, in my mind, in violation of the state purchasing regulations. Nowhere in this bid is there any mention of a port tow. I'm looking at the invoices that part of the contract. I see a $5,000 is the high, and I don't even see a $35,000, a $35 tow here. It's part of, in parcel of this packet. So I'm a little confused as to why, we're talking about this contract when we spend most of our time talking about a port tow, and that's a problem. So clearly we haven't followed our procurement process and procedures. That's what the auditor had identified. And that is what we've been talking about this evening. If these contracts, we're paying a vendor on $5,000 and we can get a clarification from the treasurer. But at this point, I'd like to ask the auditor to opine on a little bit, if you can clarify for us. When you audited this, did you find that the contract that, this bid and this contract was followed? And if it wasn't followed, was it not followed for only these port tows? Shed some light on that for us, because that's the problem.
So when this came before me, and I believe I spoke to purchasing, and he said he was going to reach out to Elaine. Elaine, did Alejandro tell you that there was a problem with this bid, with this direct pay that you wanted to do?
He told me to, Commissioner, what did he respond to you on that? I believe
it was to you, Elaine. I have the Asana tasks. It was to you.
Yeah.
And you ignored it, and you ignored me.
I did not ignore it.
Is what is really, I find insulting. I report to the council, Okay, if the press got it, it's because they pulled my report off prior to anyone else. I report to the council. Purchasing knew, the controller knew, because I had to ask the controller to get this information from Elaine. So that's disappointing. So that causes alarm. I went through every single tow slip from the payment that was done in July, and there are
Excuse me,
265.
Excuse me, Deputy
One of
Commissioner,
them was
the auditor is
$35.
speaking.
One was $35. I have them for $100, $100, $150. The $35 bid for a regular vehicle within city limits had different prices. I'm not accusing anyone of doing any wrong. I asked Elaine to look into it and she ignored me. I had to do this report because there was a lot of interest in this. So I wanted to get the vendor paid. In order to get the vendor paid, we need to reconcile this. And that's where we are today.
so I had asked the director.
Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I would. So I had asked the director of purchasing to do an increase to the blanket contract. And he had brought the matter to me back and said that he had spoken to the director of public property, and the recommendation is that the police department write an approval to pay letter, which I did. So he brought that to the pre-board meeting, came back to me and stated that after the pre-board meeting, there are some recommendations and questions. So after the questions, he asked for invoices and all the backup to him, for which I sent all the pictures and all the disposal invoices. So he had the backup. And to clarify, it was not 99,000 for 1 month, it was 99,000 for 5 months. And there was also a purchase order for $40,000 that State Towing did have. And I deducted it from the total cost. So we did pay some of the invoices for that. And to clarify, some maybe on some of these invoices for the disposal fees, I do have one here for the, and I believe the auditor she should have had this backup, because he stated here that he went back to the pre-board with these invoices. Now, some of the disposal fees on here, and possibly for that $5,000, some of the disposal fees here are up to $3,000. And if you find on the port tows, some of them are tractor trailer trucks, dump trucks with tires in them, shingles, on campers loaded with debris. So yes, these port tows are extremely expensive. And I did not ignore her. I did scan. I went in the basement. I scanned all the data that I could find to her. I did not ignore her request.
Thank you. Madam Auditor?
Okay, the port tows are a completely different issue. The city needs to resolve that. There is no doubt there is a need for it. I don't doubt that at all. The city cannot arbitrarily go. We need to cap the price. We need to know exactly what they're doing, how many hours they're there. I mean, there has to be a contract so we know we're paying them properly. Number one, that's a completely different issue. I just told you that I have $80 invoices, tow slips for in-city tows. They're police department tows. They're going from the garage to Buckland Street, from the public safety garage to public street. I've included them. They're not charged $35. Keep bid $35 for within city limits. I mean, whose responsibility is it to review those tow slips to make sure that they're honoring the blanket contractor? That is my concern. That was the concern from the beginning. I simply asked you back in November, Alejandro and I, and then I had to follow up in December because it wasn't getting done. So then I proceeded, once you gave me those documents, thank you. Then I proceeded to do this report. So that's where I am with this. I prefer to get everything done and make everything go smooth. This, we shouldn't be at this point.
Okay. Did you, I see Councilman Correa has his hand up. Councilman Correa? You're on mute, sir. You're on mute, Councilman.
Sorry about that, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, I just want to weigh in. I mean, I've been listening to all three of these contracts all night. I mean, I agree with the committee that, you know, we need the police department and everybody needs to do a better job on getting the contracts. Sitting here to listening to this final part about the tolls, the port tolls and all that. I mean, I honestly have to say that just today, I contacted the police department regarding a boat that I have that was dropped off on Curtis Street. I have a boat approximately 32 feet, a foot boat on a trailer that was dropped down near the Olinville Health Center, full of debris. I mean, so I can see that not only myself, but I've been in the council office. I've listened to council staff call on behalf of council members to the police department regarding campers and boats and all that. So I'm sure there is a large amount of fee that this vendor is occurring on disposable of these vehicles. As far as the $35 tolls, I mean, I don't know anything about those, but I mean, I seen one time I was at the public safety complex for a municipal court hearing, and I seen that the vendor was there trying to remove a police vehicle from within the parking garage. And I know that he had to have 2 different tow trucks in there to get this vehicle out because of the height. They can't put it on a flatbed. So they got to drag it out and then they got to put it on another truck. So this could be why there's different fees being charged. Or I believe the commissioner or the chief can explain. I believe this vendor also brings vehicles to the public safety complex to put in, I believe they call it the well for BCI and stuff, which requires a different truck. And so, I mean, this could all be why these fees are all being different, 3,500, 75, 80, whatever they may be. So, I mean, I know that we need to do a better job on working on it, but I mean, I do honestly want to say that I went by there today on Harold Street, where this vendor is storing these, whatever you want, port tolls. I encourage everybody to go by there and go there and look and see what this vendor is removing from our neighborhood streets at our request as council members and also as on behalf of our constituents. That's all I'd like to add right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like the treasurer to weigh in at this point. I'm very concerned about the fact that the port tow is not referenced or not included in this bid or this contract, and we're making payments that are of concern and outside of the purchasing regulations.
So just to clarify something, I know that Elaine said an approval to pay, that's what was recommended by Alejandro. But an approval to pay is under the terms of the contract. It's just that you did more work, but under the terms of the contract. So I don't know how that works. If he said that, that's what he was referring to. If you need more money, that's fine, but under the terms of the contract. So $35 a tow or whatever it may be. This is once again another instance that we're not going to the Board of Contract and Supply. Okay. And when you don't go to the Board of Contract and Supply, again, it's a requirement for any contract more than $5,000. It wouldn't be on getting on the tow list. But again, if the tows are $5,000 or $50,000 and that's what the bid price is, then that's the bid price. But if you have a contract that says $35, then it must be $35. There's boats in there, it must be $1,000. It can't be $1,100, $1,200, $1,500. Or go out and advertise for port tows, and whatever the number is, it is, and follow it. That's all. The other thing that was mentioned about if you don't go out to bid on any contract in the city, there's an ordinance that says you must have an itemized bill or it should not be paid. So again, we're not following the Board of Contract and Supply and the rules of the city. And I mean, I guess my question is, let's say we did tow these things. Who's signing off on it? Who knows that there's debris in it? Who knows about anything like that? I mean, I don't know.
There's no itemization.
Right, there's no itemization. We don't know. So that's my position is, again, if you have a contract for more than $5,000, no one has that authority to move forward on it unless you get Board of Contract and Supply. That's the mayor doesn't have authority, the council president doesn't have authority, I don't have authority, no one has authority. That's why you have a Board of Contract and Supply, again, to make it public, to be transparent, and everybody knows what the bill is going to be, period. So that's what I wanted to say. I'm disappointed that we just can't go to the Board of Contract and Supply, and it ends up costing the taxpayers money.
So thank you, Treasurer. Thank you, Auditor. So what concerns me, I've already expressed it. We've spent a lot of time tonight talking about this port tow, not contemplated in the bid. So there was no bid for that. So job one, we need to go out to bid for that work. That's a baseline requirement. Based on the auditor's analysis that she was able to pull together, it appears to me, I'm not even sure, I don't even have great confidence that the contract that we did go out to bid for is being fulfilled. So, you know, that's an outstanding item for me. We clearly need to itemize these invoices so that we can manage the work that is being done and tie it back in an audible fashion to make sure that we're making appropriate payments of taxpayers' dollars for services that are essential to maintain. No one is questioning the services. We certainly appreciate the work that is being done. We just need to make sure our duty as watchdogs is to make sure that the appropriate procedures and policies and internal controls are in place. And one of our internal controls is our auditor's review. She works for the council, she reports to the council, and under her own testimony, she identified that she reviewed this or did an audit on this because she was trying to make sure a vendor was paid. So that's kind of where we're at. So I think we need to accept this report from the auditor. I think I would like to ask for the commissioner as well as the deputy commissioner to provide an itemized analysis of all of the bills that have been paid for the period of this audit period. No, do you have it?
That covers the payment that was done in July of 2021. As far as I know, we still owe, for some reason, they were doing quarterly billing. We still owe from July through October, through December. And during that time, when asked, how do we handle this? I said, the vendor needs to stop doing work for the city or sue the city because we can't pay him based on these bills.
Okay, we need to get back up on those invoices and then we need to be able to determine if we can make payment. And we have to go out to bid on this port tow immediately. So with that, I'd like to, I don't see any other hands up, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept this report from our auditor. I thank her for her work and her diligence. I would like thank you, Councilwoman Castillo. I would like, in addition to that, motion, I would like the solicitor to review the existing contract and the backup provided. Any additional documentation that's requested by the auditor, I'm going to request that the deputy commissioner make available to her so that we can figure out how we get this vendor paid. Again, this isn't about the vendor. This is about the city following appropriate purchasing regulations. I'm sure the vendor's doing great work, but we need to make sure that we're following our procedures and protocols. All right, so with that, I think we're going to have the solicitor review the existing contract because I'm concerned that we're even following the existing contract that we have, and we are immediately going out to bid on the port work, because it's clearly essential, but we can't be paying people and getting invoices that are not itemized for services that we have no idea on what's going on. That motion has been made by Councilwoman Castillo, seconded by Councilman Taylor, all in favor, and Naducci, all in favor, aye. Any opposed? Oh, there is a request. Wasn't there a request by the council president?
Yes.
Has it been responded to?
Commissioner, have you responded to?
I have not responded to
Okay.
his letter. In his letter, he referenced that it'll be brought up,
Okay,
and it's being brought up, I'm assuming, by this committee, and that's where we are with
Okay.
request for his.
okay, sure, thank you very much. I think I'm gonna add a motion to respond to the council president's request in writing. He doesn't do that often, but he deserves a response in writing. And that's the motion.
Motion made, Madam Chair.
Second.
Made by Castillo, seconded by Taylor and Naducci, all in favor, aye. Any opposed? Ayes
Aye.
have it. Motion carries, matter passes. Thank you very much. I don't see any further business on the agenda for this evening. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion made.
Motion made quickly by Senior Leader Naducci, seconded by Vice Chair Castillo, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. All right.